There's the recording there. So, as I was to say, welcome to the PSUM interview, or the Physical Sciences Undergraduate Mentoring Interview. Um, and thank for taking time to attend the Zoom interview. Just to get started, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do in the field or in your studies?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Caroline. I am currently at Stanford doing biomedical engineering research within the immunological branch of bioengineering. And my ultimate path is to get a PhD in chemistry. I graduated from undergrad about 9 months ago in last June from Williams, which is a school on the East Coast. And I plan to pursue polymer chemistry or polymer organic chemistry, but I went to Williams is a small liberal arts college, which without engineering offered. And so I was enthusiastic about having the opportunity to engage in more engineering research within the biological sphere so that I can apply my future organic polymer chemistry research to those sorts of categories and research prospects. So currently just working in a research lab at Stanford.
Okay, sounds very complex. So, how do you become interested in this field? In other words, like what motivated you and inspired you to pursue this particular field?
Sorry, I don't know if you're like the audio is a little bit off. Can you say, yeah, it's kind of vibrating. Or
I can repeat the question. So, how did you become interested in this field and what motivated you or inspired you to pursue this particular field?
so I've always been very interested in science, and I was pre-med in the beginning of my time in undergrad. And so I was taking the usual bio, chemistry, physics trifecta, and I took organic chemistry and absolutely fell in love with it. And so I ended up pursuing more of chemistry than I did in any other sphere. And as I got farther along in my undergraduate studies, I realized that I was more passionate about chemistry than I was anything biological, and realized that I was more interested in pursuing chemistry than I would be simply doing medicine. And so I did an undergraduate research thesis where I spent a lot of time in lab and researching within polymer chemistry, and wrote and published and also just presented at multiple conferences. And so I from there realized that that was where my passions lay rather than in medicine. So that was the roundabout way that I got there. And then halfway through senior year, I decided to apply to a bunch of different post-baccalaureate research fellowship positions all across the country to find one that fit. So that was how I got here.
Right. So next question is, how do most people get into this particular field that you're studying or that you're exploring? And what's in common into the other jobs that utilize your particular studies?
How do people enter the field that I'm in? I mean, I suppose engaging in research in undergrad, I mean, taking intro organic chemistry, and then continuing on with the harder level classes from beyond the intro level is how I got into the field, specifically engaging in lots of work study programs within my undergraduate studies. And then how did I get, because I mean, for me, I just was, I'm already in an entry level job right now, and there are a ton of different terminologies that they use within job postings, but lab tech, research professionals, it'll also mention like, okay, bachelor's degree, and then it'll also mention that, it's with the prospect of attending graduate school after 2 years. Post-baccalaureate research fellow is another common terminology. So I found, I just sort of looked, and I also used a lot of resources within my school. So they had a lot of listings that were sent to the chemistry department that I was able to sift through and look for the ones that were most applicable to my interests. So that usually is how, I got through that, or reaching out to professors directly if you're interested in their work.
So for the research portions, it was like your main method of like trying to engage or get into research, or like sort of the other studies that you could try to do there.
I mean, within undergrad, it was a lot of just sort of, I went to a smaller large school, so it was very much interacting with professors on a one-on-one basis very early on in my time in undergrad. So I was able to really learn a lot about their research and then pursue the research and enter their labs after communicating and having an opening. Within the context of my current position, when I first joined the lab, which I work in the Fishback lab at Stanford, obviously my job was far more sort of tasks that were assigned to me because of the fact that I was being trained in a lot of new protocols and techniques that I had been previously unexposed or inexperienced with. But beyond that, now that I've been trained and I have reached a level where I engage in a lot of independent research, where you obviously do quite a bit of literature search and propose projects with my PI that can further our project. And so by doing so is obviously always asking questions and always trying to further the line of thinking when we are imagining up our next experiments, but also taking initiative to be independent and research my own personal questions and trying to come up with independent projects that are both self-fulfilling, but also help the overall initiatives progress.
Very cool. Very good. Thank you for sharing. I know that you talked about doing your pre-med within your undergraduate studies. So how relevant is that sort of study to applying to what you're doing right now? Because I know that a lot of it is like the chemical, but is there any part of the physics that you applied as well to within your studies?
I mean, I think pre-med, at least with my experience, is just a very overarching term, which meant that I took a certain amount of bio, a certain amount of chem, a certain amount of physics. And so I don't necessarily think that it uniquely prepared me for this experience. I think that, of course, having a strong biological and physical background alongside my chemical background is very helpful. And so I think that coursework was very relevant and helpful with preparing myself for this job. I did also apply to medical school before I decided I didn't want to attend. So I did go through the MCAT, which was also another step to understand a lot of what I'm doing now, specifically because of the fact that I'm working within the human body context. Obviously, we're using mice, but we're trying to produce a treatment for cancer. And so the goal is to be used in humans. And so a lot of the work that I did to prepare for the MCAT or a lot of the work that I learned in my biology classes is pertinent, but is not, I would not say that like, yes, it was helpful to get me to where I am today, but should I had not have taken the pre-med courses that I did, I would have just required a little bit extra outside research, and textbook consultation.
Right, I can definitely see that. So, yeah, thank you for sharing here. So the next question is, what skills, abilities, etc., are essential to your success in your job, in your eyes?
Skills. I mean, there are quite a few laboratory techniques, obviously, that I use every single day, but on a more broad scale, I think the ability to ask questions and the ability to have scientific initiative, where if something is happening and you're seeing some trends in the data, being able to ask important questions and continue down lines of thinking. So I think that a lot of having really strong background in the knowledge, in the scientific concepts behind which you're studying, and then from there, being unafraid to voice your opinion or ask questions, is a really important skill, as well as just perseverance, because it's a lot of times experiments fail and don't work, but if you allow yourself to continue trying, eventually they will work. So I think those are pretty good skills.
I see. I can definitely see that in your particular field. Right. Next question would be, what is something that surprised you most in your first couple of years of your job, or even maybe the last couple of years of your job?
Surprised me. I think that something that was shocking was I always assumed that the PIs or postdoctorate researchers were always very in the know of what was happening, or very much keenly aware of what was happening within the context of each experiment. I think that coming in, there's a lot of unknowns about exactly the mechanisms that our cancer treatments are working or not working. And there are a lot of pathways with which there are a lot of pathways that are whose exact step-by-step process are unknown. And I think that it was very shocking to me that a lot of science is speculation, and a lot more science than I had anticipated is more I guess unproven, and that there's a lot of work that can be done within that. And also just that when things work, you don't necessarily always need every specific answer to show its productivity and its effectivity. Yeah, and then that was a lot of learning from that.
Well, but that's very interesting. Very interesting. All right. Next question. Are you able to establish a work-life balance within your field? And how did you do to sort of establish that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I have a pretty robust work-life balance. My job luckily is pretty consistently 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, as a post-baccalaureate research fellow, 9 to 5, and then I come in on weekends sometimes, but it's nothing over the top, and I can take time off if I need. So I mean, lab work in general can be pretty flexible as long as you're able to get the work done. The timing at which you do said work is not necessarily always important. It's a very flexible job. I can always leave if I have a meeting, if I have, doctor's appointments or anything like that. It's a very lab research, because of the fact that it doesn't matter if the markets are open or something of that nature. It's all about just sort of getting the work done at the pace that you can. And so it is very flexible, and I'm very appreciative for that.
Thank you for sharing that. Next question would be, what do you wish you had known before you started in this industry?
Oh, what did I wish I'd known? I guess I'm kind of repeating what I've already said, but that a lot of the science is guesswork, and that it's okay to not know, that the answer is okay. It's okay to say, I don't fully know, and this is mere speculation. I think that was anxiety provoking at first, but I think that could have been helpful to know.
Right. I can definitely see that as well. All right. And then the last question to wrap up this interview is, what advice would you give someone considering this type of job or this particular field of study?
I'd say advice is just, if you're wanting to enter the field, is to keep your eyes open and don't fixate on one type of research. If you know that you're really passionate about organic chemistry, don't limit yourself to that specific field of to that specific type of organic chemistry you think you're interested in. Is that open your eyes to all the different types of opportunities you can, and from there you can learn a lot more, and then continue to narrow down your specialty as you go along in your career.
Definitely agree with that sentiment as well. All right, and that concludes the interview for today. So thank you so much for your time and advice during this interview, and yeah.
No problem.
So